Excellent. All right. So we all know the relationship between the executive director and the board chair is critically important to the nonprofit and its success. And today we are joined by two amazing board chair CEO partners. Their organizations work on issues that are critically important to their communities, and their work together has enabled them to grow and further their missions. So we have from St. Paul Center in Rensselaer, CEO Tracy Pitcher and her board chair, Ginny O'Brien. And from the Brooklyn Community Pride Center in Brooklyn, obviously, their CEO, Floyd Rumohr, and Chair Sonelius, Kendrick-Smith. So thank you all for joining us. I'm going to start by asking our board chairs to tell us a little bit about their organizations, why they joined the board, and how they ended up as the board chair. So Ginny, you want to get us started?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for having this format today. I'm excited about it, and I just want to explain that I have a little bit of a hoarse throat, so bear with me. How I joined, was that your first question, Barbara? How I joined the board?
Tell us a little bit about St. Paul's first.
Sure. St. Paul Center, I'm happy to talk about St. Paul Center. It's really near and dear to my heart. St. Paul Center is a homeless shelter in the city of Rensselaer, New York, which is right outside of the capital of New York, Albany. And it was started in 2006. I think it first opened the doors in 2006. So we're a relatively new organization, but we are constantly on the move, growing, and in terms of just the breadth that we have in the community. The shelter itself is a 19-bed shelter for women and children. And that attracted me to St. Paul's because I just loved the mission of helping moms and children break the cycle of poverty and homelessness. And I think St. Paul's has been tremendously successful in doing that. St. Paul's has empowered the moms that are there with some life skills to help them really form and sustain an independent life for themselves and their families. And I think one of the things that I particularly love about St. Paul Center is, as I mentioned, they're a shelter, but they continue their work once they find housing for the moms in an independent setting. They continue that work with the moms and their families in a program called Bridges. And I love that because it really helps the moms navigate the systems, whether it be court or just DSS, Department of Social Services, whatever it happens to be, they stay with them. They don't just, put them in a house and say, you're on your own.
That's awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got on the board?
Sure.
And became chair.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of a retread as chair because I had been chair a couple of years ago. And then according to our bylaws, when my term was finished, I had to step down. And I actually had to step off the board for a while. But I was asked to come back, and very happy to come back. And then this past year, Tracy had asked several people if they would consider being a board chair. And I was very honored and happy to be asked again. And I certainly said yes right away. And so then, we had a vote, and there were, at that time, I think at that time, the other people that were asked decided to not go forward with it. So I became the chair, and I'm really happy to be back in that position. I just actually became the chair in March again.
Awesome.
So it's relatively new.
That's great. How about you, Sonelius? Tell us a little bit about the Pride Center and how you got there.
I'm now, okay, sorry, I was on mute. Happy to do a quick synopsis of it. And like Jenny, I'm very happy to be here this afternoon and to share a little bit about what we do at Brooklyn Community Pride Center. Again, similar, it's a place that's near and dear to my heart. It continues to get deeper and grow fonder every day. BCPC was founded around 2008, and we're a community center to provide a network of programs and services to the LGBTQ+ community, obviously in Brooklyn. And in part, I like to think of us as an ecosystem enabler where where our services are provided by vendors. We have our own programming, but when I say by others per se, we have access to, we provide a space so that these organizations can have access to LGBTQ clients. BCPC in particularly is a place where there's trust and awareness as a center of expertise as well as advisory. And we're that bridge. We have identified 6 areas that align to our mission and the community needs. These areas are workforce development, social isolation, immigration, racial justice, homeless and housing, and health and wellness. Recently, one of the aspects that we're very excited about is that we entered a partnership with Callan Lord to provide a mental center at our new location, which is in Crown Heights. So BCPC enables our community to actively participate in positive, life-affirming activities. We are a center that puts people first in a safe environment that respects all who come to us. Now, I was brought to the BCPC by Debbie Brennan, who was an original founder and was the board chair. And I've known Debbie for several years as my firm is a client of her firms. And she's been recruiting me and discussing the center with me for years. But, you know, at times it just didn't match up with where I was in terms of work and other things that I was doing. But Debbie never gave up. She kept after me. We kept talking, kept inviting me to events. And so eventually the time was right. And so once I joined the board, I eagerly accepted the responsibility as director. At one point, I assumed the role of treasurer, was very excited about that. And during that time was developing an amazing and wonderful relationship with our CEO. Debbie had to step down from the position of chair or president, as I think we use at the center. At the end, it was pre-COVID. Was it 2019-ish? And then our vice president then stepped in. And then 4 or 5 months later, he had to step down unexpectedly. And so there we are, having to determine who is going to step into that position. And I was elected at that point, rather unexpectedly, not thinking that I was going to be moving into a chair position. But my experience in the past, I've been chair of other boards, so I eagerly accepted. We had a lot of work to do, still doing a lot of exciting things, but that's a little bit about how our center and about how we became engaged and partnering with our fabulous CEO, Floyd.
That's fantastic. Thank you, both of you. For the audience, someone asked us if we could enable the captions, so we just did that. You should be able to see them if you've enabled them yourselves. So, Tracy, Floyd, why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about the practicalities of how you interact with your chair, how you help keep them informed, and how your relationship works.
Sure.
Tracy, you're off mute. Why don't you go first?
Floyd, I hope you don't mind.
Go ahead, please.
Actually, it's always been my practice to work very closely with the chair of our board, regardless of who's in the position. I especially like working with Ginny, though. We have the same philosophy as no surprises, please, no surprises. So we may have a tendency to overtalk, to overshare just for the sake of transparency. And personally, I've always found that works best. And 2, we also work collaborative as a collective, and that if something comes up, it's not one person making the decision. While the CEO often has, the ultimate authority or the ultimate responsibility, we do engage in a lot of shared decision making. And that has been true for as long as I've been with St. Paul Center. And I really think that is essential in engaging all of our directors on our board. But two, making sure that the board feels, each director feels as though they have a voice in the process, in our direction, in establishing our future. So we talk a lot.
We do.
Do you have set times that you talk, or just you kind of feel like you're available to each other enough and when you need to talk to one another?
It seems like we're available, we're able to find the time when we need the time. And also too, in addition to Ginny, I have committee chairs who are also very active and very engaged. So if Ginny isn't available, then I can always reach out to one of my committee chairs. And because we do a lot as an entire board, most everybody is really up to speed on what's going on, what needs to be untangled, discussed further, plan Bs. So it is kind of more on the fly as needed, but actually ends up being quite frequent.
That's awesome. Floyd, over to you. I think you have a slightly different experience. Sonelius didn't have experience as chair before, and it was kind of thrust into the role. So share with us a little more about how you work, how you started to work together and how you work together now.
Well, once I think Sonelius and I got over the initial panic that our previous board chair was transitioning, we sort of leapt into planning mode on what to do. We did have some time to plan the transition, but not a lot of time. So Sonelius stepped in without skipping a beat. He is my hero. I am so grateful to him for doing that because board members for an LGBTQ plus community-based organization like ours are not exactly easy to find. And Sonelius has been extremely committed from the beginning. He was initiated by being our gala chair, pulled that off. That was beautifully done and executed. It was one of our most successful ever. And you raised the point about how we work together. I think, Sonelius, if I'm wrong, just jump in, but I'm of the mind that I like to be in agreement with the board chair on issues that are related particularly to organizational strategy, resource development, or governance. And so sometimes we have to hash ideas out among ourselves first, and then oftentimes we'll bring these ideas to the board at large once we've done a little homework and once we're pretty much unified on any potential or recommended action items. How do we do this? We have monthly board meetings, and Sonelius and I do a lot of texting, and that's how we sort of get together. Sometimes we have Zooms, sometimes we have phone calls, sometimes we have in-person meetings as well, whatever is really sort of convenient.
So a lot of communication. Sonelius?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject something just because of perhaps it might be a nuanced difference, but because we were not expecting me to assume to the role of chair when I needed to. But one of the things I think that helped early on is we had one of our face-to-face meetings. We actually don't live that far from each other, and so invited. And I like having those meetings where we can be in a space that's our own, is comfortable, relaxed, order some lunch. And so Floyd, my hero, because there's always been just a language that we can share and a comfort that was evident even before I assumed the role of president. But my point I'd like to make is that wasn't a crisis moment, but it was urgent. We had frank conversations, and to emphasize the point that Floyd was making, we were clear from the jump that, okay, we have to figure out a way to be aligned. We don't necessarily have to agree on everything, but it's important to align on the major themes and strategic initiatives that we want to have a discussion about, and be together, at least unified to a certain degree. We go into the meetings, allowing everyone to have their space and opinion, but to be able to together navigate us to a place of consensus, navigate us to a place where we can agree. And so if we don't have those conversations and those dialogues, and to hash out what the points and the pros and cons might not be earlier on, then I think those conversations and those meetings might devolve into some aspect of chaos. So communication is critical, and for a center like ours that's serving a variety of needs, there has to be constant communication, and we have to care. And so there is texting, there is the email, I need to get you on the phone, in addition to the meetings that we might set up, because we're talking about people's lives. We're talking about real issues that are affecting communities and homes. And that becomes, if you really care, you just can't put it to the side. There are things that come up. So you always have to be able to be connected together and and in some instances, be seeking solutions.
Well said. Well said. All right. Well, so you all have boards in addition to being chairs and EDs. Can you share with us a little bit about how you divide up the management of your boards, the relationship? Tracy, you mentioned that you work with your committee chairs quite a bit. Ginny, I'm sure you do as well. Talk a little bit about sort of how you work together as leaders of this collective group.
Sure. Well, each of our volunteer leadership positions, our committee chairs, they all have job descriptions, and the job descriptions are reviewed prior to someone accepting that responsibility. And then two, there's planning that goes into upcoming board meetings. Each committee, like for instance, our governance committee has a calendar that they work from for the entire year, so they know what's expected in January at our annual meeting in March. And so that is taken in, each committee's calendar is taken into consideration when we're planning for an upcoming board meeting for agenda, and to make sure that the individual chair reports, because each committee chair reports back at during our board meeting, are covering the information that needs to be shared with the entire board.
So just up front, making sure that you have goals and objectives for all of your board members, so that makes it easier for your board chair to make sure to interact with them and make sure that people meet their responsibilities. Would you say that, Ginny?
Yeah, I would say that, kind of piggybacking on what Tracy just said, that the communication between board members, between myself and Tracy and other board members is really key to keeping our organization, we're not a large organization, but keeping us all informed and on the same page of what things that are happening, impacting our organization, or even ways that we are growing, because we have grown over the past couple of years with Tracy at our helm. We've expanded our services, and we're still in that mode right now of expansion. So I think having the communication between myself and the CEO, Tracy, and also myself, and also I serve on a committee as well. And I have served on other committees during my tenure with the board. I've been on the finance committee, which I have to admit was not my strength, but I was there, and it was helpful to have that background. But I've been on that. I've been on the resource and development committee, fundraising committee, and I've been on now the governance committee. So it's helped me, I think, develop as the chair also, because I've been on the various committees and know pretty well the committee work and what's entailed and the responsibility of that too.
Awesome. Great. Over to you, gentlemen. Working with all of the board, how you divide that up, how that works.
Well, that's a good question. Sonelius and I are both ex officio on all the board, on all the committees. So the committee activity of late has not been as active as it has been at its highest levels of activity. And I think there's some reasons for that. One is that our community is being brutalized politically. And I think that there is an emotional, psychological component in our community, even for members of our board who are successful leaders in each of their particular areas. I think that's creating a sort of an existential strain on folks. So I don't think we've intentionally reduced the activity of the committees, but they've sort of organically begun to slow down a little bit. And I think Sonelius and I have adjusted our expectations to that. I mean, we're all human beings, and we can do what we can do. And so that being said, the committees are meeting. We usually check in monthly at the monthly board meetings in person. So we are checking in frequently with them. And we are working through or currently discussing a strategic planning process, which is foremost on the agenda, because what's going on in the world. Sonelius mentioned some program areas that we have been focusing on. Some of those program areas are not going to be a focus probably going forward. And that's what a strategic planning process will tell us. And that is what Sonelius and I are beginning to massage the expectations of the board to sort of begin to focus mostly on the strategic goals and direction of the organization, with the other committees playing more of a support role. I don't know if I got that right, Sonelius, or characterized that.
Absolutely. I do want to, and thank you, Floyd. I do want to, emphasize that generally, it is not too dissimilar from what Tracy described. We have the committees, their meetings, and minutes, and et cetera. And Floyd has set up a system whereby we have a private portion of a portal that directors can go into, and that's where the minutes and the notes from the committees are stored. So at any given moment, when there's been an update, any director can access that portal and be able to read about what activity or decisions or recommendations are being made, and should be prepared to discuss any of those items at our monthly board meeting. But as Floyd was, I would add to what Floyd was saying in terms of the, sort of the strain that, many of us have been experiencing because of the, what's been going on against our community, and then just the general pandemic. We've grown, we've moved into a new location. And so I would just say attention has had to be divided, and then energy poured into those aspects that are required as you open up a facility. We did our soft launch, and then we did our hard opening, and then the conversations that the board members are needed to be at events where there's the press. So there's been a series of additional activities that we normally wouldn't have, that then is drawing on, the time and the needs of our directors. What I will say is the strategic planning period that we're in now is critical. Not only that aspect, but we're looking to bring in some additional board members. Our governance board committee is beginning its work. We have a robust list of potential candidates for the board that we're going to be working through to identify. But at this point, with such change that's going on in our community, with such change that's going on at the center, we've got to really begin to get in the weeds around our strategic planning. Our next board meeting, which is actually going to be Sunday, is going to start to discuss some of those components. And so I know Floyd and I are very much looking forward to the next several months of working through that. And then again, at some point, realigning ourselves from an organizational structure, which will not only service the needs of the center, but align us in terms of our operations and as a board.
Can I just add something to that, please? It's interesting that even though our organizations are, with a different mission, we're very much aligned in terms of right now we are considering a strategic plan. We've been talking about that, and we're looking probably in the fall of doing a strategic plan because, as I mentioned earlier, our organization is growing. And so we want to, look again at our mission and our vision and see how those things are aligning or have they changed. And also we're bringing you mentioned new board members, Sonelius, and we're at the same level tonight. In fact, we're introducing several new, I think 4 new board members that will be coming on. So I think the timing for the strategic plan is so critical and crucial, because we are getting these new board members with a different skill set and experience and expertise. So I'm really happy that all the stars are aligning for us to do this. So I just thought that was interesting that you had mentioned that, and we're considering the same thing.
And for as much work as that's ahead of us, I'm sure you, Jenny, you feel it's really exciting. I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
And an enthusiasm that you sort of just like, oh, this is really, it's fun in a different kind of way, but it really is an energy that comes with it, even though it can be a daunting exercise.
I absolutely, well said.
That's awesome. Tracy, Floyd, you have such energy in your leadership. How are you going to tell us a little bit about the practicalities of how you're going to balance all of this new strategic work, your new board members, with how you're going to work together on that? Who's taking the lead on what?
Yeah, I don't know. I have to get back to you on that. No, kidding. I kid too much, actually.
It's no, humor is good. We've been through a lot the last couple of years.
Our last strategic plan expired during COVID. So this, I'm really looking at being a new adventure for us, because our organization is in a very different place. The 2 populations that our organizations serve are definitely faced with challenges that are unique. And I'm really, what my hope is that out of our strategic planning, that we will be able to focus a little bit more on outreach, education, and advocacy, which, being a smaller organization, really we have not had that voice in our community before. We have larger organizations that do stand up and speak to for the homeless community, but we have now expanded our service menu and gotten larger and have played a much bigger role in the homeless community in the capital region, and we've formed a lot of wonderful partnerships. But the strategic plan is, I think, going to take us to a different level and add that responsibility of greater outreach, better, more impactful community education and advocacy. And the really wonderful thing that our board went through an assessment just a couple of months ago, and it's serving as a very helpful tool to our planning process. And it's identified some gaps that at the board level we really needed to address in order to move to take on a bigger responsibility to our mission. And so we have been really lucky in identifying the 4 new board members that are going to be voted on tonight. Are one of them, a couple of them actually, I think are really going to be key in that area of advocacy and community education. So with new blood coming on the board, I think is going to add more energy to it. And I think for those who, because this year we're going to add 4, and last year we added 4 new board members. And so we do have a lot of new blood, but the strategic planning process is going to take these folks in the weeds. And during this planning process, they themselves are going to build a better, stronger foundation that they will be able to speak to our mission, to our organization in a more confident way. And then 2, it would allow us to spread out the responsibilities more, because people will have that within them that will build the confidence that they will be able to, take the mission forward and to focus on the areas in which they will be responsible for in the strategic plan.
I'm just going to ask a quick follow-up before I go to Floyd and Sonelius. So Ginny and Tracy, you got 4 new board members last year, 4 new board members this year. You know, we both at Nikon and BoardStrong are very much advocates that your board should reflect your current needs going forward. You should be thinking about these things. But I assume then that means that you have some board members who've been on for a while. And now you're going to have to work to assimilate all of them and make sure everybody feels like one group. Have you guys thought about how are you going to do that?
Well, you're absolutely right, Barbara. There will be some, I think, growing pains, perhaps, you know, getting together with new people. But I think that the skill set that the new board members are bringing are really the skill sets that we need. And I think the really cool thing is that a lot of the people, many of the people that have been on last year, new board members and the new board members coming on now, they sought us out. It wasn't, you know, we had to like, you know, who are we going to ask, that kind of thing. It's like we're a magnet. People are coming to us. And I think a lot of that credit I want to give to Tracy because of her involvement in the community, that she really is doing a lot in terms of outreach, getting our name out there. It kind of reminds me of the little engine that could. That's what we are. We just keep chugging along, and we're getting stronger and more well known in the community, which I think you know, will help us with funding down the road, and also people that maybe will make donations or volunteer with us. So there's so many advantages coming out of having the new board members coming in, because then, you know, they talk to other people in their circle. And so the net just keeps getting bigger and larger, and it's all good and very exciting.
That's great. So being on the same page about your vision has been very important to your relationship and to your organization.
Yes.
I think that's marvelous. Floyd, Sonelius, you seem to be in the same place. I mean, I have to say, I know you guys in the middle of COVID built and launched an entirely new center. It must have been tempting to sort of sit on your laurels for a little bit and say, okay, we're done. But it looks like that's not really the case. So in partnership, how are you? And tell us a little bit about sort of how you're moving the board forward with that as well.
This is a great question, Barbara, and I'm so glad you asked it in terms of balancing the strategy with the operations. Nearly 7 years ago, when I started this job, I knew once I started, the operational temptations would be too great. So for many months before that, I was working with the board and the staff and the stakeholders on a preliminary draft of a 2020 strategic vision framework. And we completed that very early on in my tenure here. And it turned out to be one of the best things we ever did. Because when people would come to me with ideas, whether they be programmatic, the board, or whatever, I would whip out my ideas rubric. And I would say, well, that is a fair or good idea. It will be a great idea when it aligns with organizational strategy. We have a resource development plan and the organizational capacity to execute against it. So all that to say that balancing the broader strategy, vision, mission, purpose, core values, et cetera, with the day-to-day operations of a very busy community center is something that takes a lot of prioritizing and balance. My first advice would be just to breathe and come up with an ideas rubric of your own, because people will come to you with them. We're a community center, everyone has an opinion. So we had to sort of develop a framework for thinking about those ideas. And the biggest framework is strategic vision. And that's why I think Sonelius and I are so passionate about looking at the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years of growth here. What does that look like? Because that strategic framework frames everything, as I mentioned before, board recruitment, even staffing. So that's our priority going forward, and balancing those things can be quite a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I just to add on to that is that you know, it's, I think a good strategic planning, strategic visioning is obviously critical, but we also have to allow ourselves to adapt. We didn't know a pandemic was coming. We were already in the throes of finishing up our second site. And you can imagine that those bring unexpected challenges that, takes your attention. And so you're sort of back and forth. And then we're a board that cares about our staff. And Floyd, I hope if it's okay that I share this, that at one point it was more than obvious that, Floyd, to his credit, has been the janitor, has been the secretary, has been the window washer, has been the person that opens the doors, closes the doors at night, any of those things that we could say are just, a person maybe shouldn't be doing. Floyd has done it on behalf of an organization that started out tiny grassroots, but with a heart, and that has grown significantly and has a name within the community. And now that we're known in such a very vibrant and strong way, and we have very, committed programs, we're now being asked to be and do more. And why shouldn't we? We're in the largest borough. We're servicing we have the most diverse borough in the city. So the demand should be higher and the expectations should be higher. And with that, and we're not a huge board. And so there came a time when it was like, Floyd, oh my God, he needs a break. He needs some time. You all do. It is a very demanding position. Anyone running these organizations from the ED to a CEO perspective, and our board is one that we're so connected that, we know that something's amiss. Finally, Floyd and I were able to have a conversation. And so Floyd was able to take a leave of absence, a much needed leave of absence. So again, we're in the middle of strategic planning, we're in pandemic, we've opened a new center, and our hero needs to take a break. So that happened, but we're a board that is so committed to the center, so committed to Floyd, and so committed to the mission. We say, okay, now what's next? We were fortunate that we were able to have someone on our board with some experience stepped in as a CEO. We leaned on the services of Barbara and the nonprofit for executive. I'm forgetting the name, Floyd. But it allowed us,
Center, yeah,
nonprofit center. But that allowed us the opportunity to inwardly reflect on and taking the time for each of us, directors and staff, to make sure that there is healing, that there's rest, that there's, that we're giving each other grace, and then stepping up in a variety of ways to keep going. And then when Floyd came back, we all knew with that much enthusiasm and that focus, we're able to pick up and to proceed and to really think about some of those asks from the community. And I, as the board chair, it is my responsibility, I feel, to then align our directors, get an agreement, and to provide the resources Floyd needs so that he can go forward and make the operational, administration, and the executive decisions for the center. Sorry, I just wanted to share that with you because it's been an integral part of our history and an important aspect of our development as a board and as a center.
I'm going to ask a question, and then we're getting all sorts of questions about what is an ideas rubric. So maybe we'll take a second. But Sonelius, so Tracy and Ginny talked about their board and recruiting new people and how they've been, kind of strategic about that. Have you guys thought about that? Are you looking for new people? Anybody here on the call want to join their board? No, seriously. It's sometimes a challenge. You have a group of people who work well together, right? And to think about what do we need next. Oh, you're on mute.
All right, no, you're exactly right. We are actively seeking, as you can imagine, for an organization as large as ours, and we have a very opinionated board, and who are well connected. We have a really, what I can consider a robust list of people that we're starting to have a conversation with. But I think the thing that Floyd and I are aligned on is that when we vet and when we have conversations, people who are asked to join the board, of course, we're looking to identify someone that can, fit a particular need. And we do our assessment and we figure out what that area, what those areas might be. And there could be 9 million people out there who could have a skill set that we need. However, that doesn't mean that they're going to be the fit for the organization, or we try to get to the areas or the elements where we can understand their view on our mission, view on community, view on purpose, their evidenced experience in those areas. And then we also go through a situation where there are conversations that, Floyd or the governance chair was set up between either board member, perhaps a volunteer within the organization, because if you're just not joining the board, you're joining a community, you're joining the center, you're joining those who come in and out of our organization. That could be volunteer staff or someone that's being invited to come and check us out. So you stand as part of our family, and you're going to be a representative and an advocate for the center and for the services. And it's a pretty intense scrutiny. We try to make it fun, but we're very, very careful. We're small for a reason. And we add I'd like to get us to add a couple of more because of just the needs of it. But at the same time, it's an intimate organization for a reason, because those people have to be uniquely qualified and have to uniquely care about what we're doing. And if you're not, it's not going to work. And we don't need that type of voice and energy within the organization. Floyd has a lot of work to do, and we want to make sure he gets the best of us to do the work.
I so agree with what you just said, because I think, you can get people attracted to your organization that might have the skill sets you desire, let's say in finance, for example. But if they don't have the mindset or the purpose or the feeling in their heart for our mission, the fit might not be what you want, even though they have that skill set in terms of their financial ability. But I just think having the heart for the organization is so vital. And I believe that the people that we have on our board and that are coming on the board are really going to fill that role and do have our mission in their heart. And I'm really happy to see that and happy to have them join our board.
I want to join both your boards.
Well,
So,
you can talk to Sonelius directly about that, Barbara.
We're sending the application at 12, what is this end, 105?
All right. Well, so one of the things that I've really noticed is that you both as pairs are quite aligned on the vision for the organization and the mission of the organization. And Floyd, you mentioned something called an ideas rubric that has kind of caught some attention. So could you spend like a minute or two on what that was, and did you work with the board? Did you present it to them? How did that work?
No. The ideas rubric is in here. I used to be a teacher, so we use rubrics all the time for children. Basically, a rubric is a scale, 4 being awesome, 3 being good, 2 being fair, 1 being poor, and then you have the indicators of whatever the thing is. So if this thing is an idea, one thing that makes an idea great, and I will write this down eventually. For us, one thing that makes an idea great is, does it align with a strategic goal? If it doesn't align with a strategic goal, then it's probably a fair or poor idea until the timing is right. If it aligns with a strategic goal, then are there resources available? And if not, are there resources accessible? Or is there a strategy around resource development? Or can we develop one with our existing resource network? Or what does the resource engine look like? Is it feasible financially? And then does it align with core values, et cetera? These are the strategic dimensions, but that sort of gives you the flavor of the indicators of a great idea. because I've said to many times to the staff in particular, come in with an idea, and I say, oh, that's a 2 on the idea rubric. It's poor now, but it might be good a year from now or 2 years from now, based on these criteria or these indicators.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. So as teams, have you ever seen a challenging board member or a challenge where you're there are factions or a faction within your board sort of trying to take the organization, having great ideas that are not in line with what the rest of you think? And how can, if you can, give us a few tips for how you dealt with, I'm not going to say problematic, but people who have great ideas but are just new and introducing things that have not been in line with what the vision is. Sonelius, you just unmuted yourself. You asked for it.
Already. No, yeah. It's not going to be a perfect situation, a perfect world, and we have a very board. So yes, we have had our experiences where things have been challenging, we shall say, when perhaps vision and desires don't align, and where the lines of what the board does or what the CEO needs to do or whatever gets blurred, or someone has forgotten, what the rules of engagement are. And so as the board chair, I hope Floyd, agrees, I really take it as my responsibility to be the sergeant at arms, to make sure that when we're having any kind of conversations, or I'm aware of a director that might be leaning into an element or a component, it is my responsibility to sort of manage that. We run meetings where everyone is, obviously we respect each other and we have conversations and we share, but there can be moments when it becomes certain that there is dissension, or where there possibly is a divide. And I am a taskmaster around, we will respect, we don't over talk. People can have their say, but at the end of the day, we do not disrespect each other. We always need to lean into our humanity. And sometimes when there are new individuals or new board members that come in with the enthusiasm, excitement, they want to change. They want to do stuff, and they want to believe a process isn't working. And to Floyd's point, let's put it through the rubric. Is it a 1, 2, 3, 4? I mean, is it aligning? Is it not? All right. Is this the way that we do things, or the way that we manage things? That's my responsibility as the board chair, is to filter that and to try to prevent any kind of confrontation or conflict between our CEO and the board. That is my responsibility, to govern and maintain the health, so that we're an operational board that doesn't impede the operations of the center. And for Floyd. So at the end of the day, if we get into a situation, I have to have a conversation. I have to be the person that hears all that out. I have to be the person that goes to Floyd and hear what he has to say. I have to remind people, that is the CEO's decision. That is what we pay him to do. You may want this and we can discuss it, but we don't do it in a way that is saying you must do something because the board says so or because I say so. Believe me, people get egos, they can do this kind of stuff. And it ain't pretty. But at the end of the day, someone has got to be there that says, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And that's the responsibility, as I see it, as the chair. And then to manage that, to get the person the training, to say, I would wish you would to consider this. To coach them. I've done coaching in the middle of board meetings, saying, okay, now, step back, take a beat. You're doing something. Whatever signals you may see, because I don't want something negative to seep into the environment, to the fabric of the organization that begins to unravel it. We work too hard. And so I take it very seriously to be that buffer and to provide that kind of leadership and stability for the organization. Boy, I didn't want to get too much into the personal stuff, but it is.
Gotcha. No, I think that's great. That's great. There are always personalities, I think.
There are always personalities, and there's always desire to have impact. And I am so adopting that rubric. Because I mean, for the very point that I think it would keep folks in line so that we don't experience mission creep, which can happen out of the goodness of our hearts. Because we want to make a difference and we want to help people. That's why we're here in the first place. But unfortunately, we do on occasion have a director who feels we should go in a different direction or take a different approach. Sonelius, I think that that role as a chair is vital, because as the executive director and CEO, the board is my boss. So for me to do that, isn't going to go over so well, and actually shouldn't go over so well. I'm fine with coaching, which, I did with one chair who hadn't had that experience before. But I've always been blessed by having a board chair who understands the need for that role and will play that role. And it actually, in the past, very recent, Ginny and I have had a conversation about that with our previous board chair, Jen. We had to do a similar type of conversation, but I think that illustrates the importance of a close relationship between your CEO and your board chair, because, keeping everything in line so that operations run smoothly and that we're meeting our mission. And for our new board members for this year, Nikon is actually going to come in to do a workshop on the roles and responsibilities of our board. And we had that once before a few years ago, and it worked out great. Sonelius, as you had that person, who was new to the board with such great energy and wanted to make a difference, and I'm answering the phone constantly by, with requests to say, use a comma instead of a colon on your website. It's like, that was a red flag that we needed to have the roles and responsibility discussion.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thank you for promoting our services, by the way. We appreciate that.
Love
All right, we have some time left. I would love to open the floor to questions from participants. Please feel free to put them in the question or the chat, in the Q&A or the chat. Okay, someone asked about divisive board members, which how is that problem resolved? I think you kind of mentioned that a little bit. What has been the best and most efficient way to find committed board members? I think you all sort of captured our attention there with the attention paid to how your board members feel passionate, in addition to having the skill set that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny, how'd you find those people?
I'm sorry, Barbara, I didn't hear the whole question. Could you repeat it? I apologize.
Yeah. The question really was, how did you find the board members who not only had the skills you needed, but were also aligned to your mission?
Oh, simply, meeting with them and interviewing them and letting them know a bit more about our organization. They might have had a little bit of information about us, but actually meeting with them. The governance committee did meet, and Tracy did too, with the new recruits, so to speak, and to talk to them. And I think you can find out a lot by just meeting with people and discussing our organizational goals, our strategic planning, and just see how those alignments can occur, or if in fact they do occur.
The new directors that we've had for the last couple of years have come from our current or previous board members. They're the best advocates for the organization. They talk about the organization with friends and colleagues. So if you've got a colleague who expressed any kind of interest, we've had the director invite the colleague in to talk more about the organization to see if it's something that they may want to get involved with. Our most effective directors have been those who've been referred by previous directors or current directors.
Right.
Get out your Rolodex, although I don't think anybody has that anymore.
I think we're a combination. Certainly recommendations by those from other directors, Floyd is he's an advocate, obviously, for the center, and his network is vast. And he's speaking at this place. He's going to this meeting, and every once in a while, he'll meet someone or gets turned on to someone, and he'll identify and raise that to us. And Floyd helped me here. I think we've also employed the use of the Governance Matters, or not. What was the organization where we people could find out about our organization, submit their names, and they culled it for us, and they provided some recommendations. I can't think of the name of the organization that did that helped us, and that sourced a couple of our directors. But to Jenny's point, it all becomes about the conversations around mission, and there has to be evidence, not just I like to do something, I want to do something. Evidence of that passion, evidence of something that you've experienced or done in the past that links to the mission, that links to the services that we provide, or links to our goals. And so if those critical components aren't there, then it's a pass, and we continue searching.
Yeah, and just one final note. One of the, not really a problem, it was actually a good problem to have. We actually had more people that were interested in joining our board than we had positions available on the board. So one of the things we talked about was having that, rather than saying to that person, no, we don't have room for you now, or discouraging them, was to ask them to become a member of a committee and, to get more involved in our organization, and then maybe, step up at some point when there is a board opening to that, if in fact they are interested in that. But I think that's a way of getting more people involved, not, not hurting that ambition that they might have had to be on the board, but recognizing it and saying, we have room for you, and I think your skill set matches this committee. We'd love for you to join. So that, I think that's another way of getting people involved, and even, recruiting new board members, so to speak.
Agree 100%.
Awesome. All right, well, we're at time. I think we've promised everybody, audience and participants alike, that we won't go over 1 o'clock. We have 1 minute left. So I want to use this time to thank the 4 of you so much, Ginny, Tracy, Floyd, and Sonelius, for giving us your time and sharing your insights. And thank everybody who's joined us as participants. Thank you for your time as well. As I said, we'll be sending this out to you, and you have you will have our information. If you have any further questions, please reach out to us. We're always that's part of our mission. We're always happy to give our advice and help with your board leadership. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.